Hello, everybody. Was Joe Biden wired during his debate this week with President Trump? That is the latest, quote, conspiracy theory surrounding the fisticuffs between the two candidates for the presidency. And I'm Larry Sparano of On Target with Larry Sparano. With us on the line is Rack of RackAttackGamer YouTube channel. And we'll start right off with whether this is real or not, just a conspiracy theory, a wild conspiracy theory, or whether there's any substance to it. Now, supposedly, he had a earpiece or something in his collar that was like an earpiece, and there was something showing in his shirt that looked like a wire and something in his sleeves. And there are some pictures of that circulating now on the internet, but Reuters news service says that higher quality video shows that it was a crease in his shirt, most probably, and in the cuff, it was most probably a crucifix, which he carries in memory of his son, and his son Bo, and also it could have been a pen point. So we'll be taking a look at those pictures shortly. But Rack, what do you think? Is it just a wild, crazy conspiracy theory, or is there something to it?
Well, to me, it looks like there's something to it. We tried to record this yesterday, but we had technical problems. I was saying yesterday even that they're going to have a pro-Biden side, that they're going to have their say about what they say it is, and they're going to have a pro-Trump side, or maybe even just a anti-Biden side that's going to say that a different way. So I'm sure that crucifixes and rosaries and all this other stuff is one explanation, but it doesn't appear that way to me. I think there was another thing saying it was a pen, maybe, but right now I have it on your screen opposite where you're sitting, where you can see right above where it says live on his right below his wrist in the Biden picture. You can see a little protrusion. It's dark, and we have other views of it that I'll bring up right now. There's a little closer up view in this particular one. It kind of does look like a pen, but not in all of them.
Yeah.
Let's bring up another view.
A pen or a crucifix. He says he wears a crucifix in tribute to his son who died of brain cancer. That was his son, Bo.
Well, that's very touching, but I don't think it's a crucifix. I don't think it's a rosary. I think it's a very convenient and nice excuse, but that's just my opinion.
Well, of course, you know what's hopping everybody up on this is the expectations, the low expectations leading into this first debate between the two. That Biden, was barely coherent. He has senility is setting in, and a lot of the betting was that he wouldn't even show up for the debate, and if he did, he'd do very poorly. So since he came off as surprisingly coherent this time, as he did during the primaries when he debated one-on-one with Bernie Sanders, people are expecting that there was some fix, hence an earpiece. Which, by the way, the Trump camp was demanding an ear inspection before the candidates took to the stage, but Biden said that they weren't going to do that. So this kind of set the stage for that kind of, quote, conspiracy theory.
Well, it's a pretty darn good precaution, I think, from the Trump administration. I mean, we want the truth. We don't want a puppet. So why not check it out? I mean, anybody who actually sees Biden's previous talkings or interviews or anything can see that at some points in time, he has slowed down speech. He stutters some of his words. He has memory problems, inaccuracies. This is just the way it is. Now, anybody else can say whatever they want, but two eyes and a good video player will make a difference to somebody that can think straight through it.
Well, again,
So,
although that does look like a wire, it could also be a crease in a shirt. I mean, to me, it's inconclusive.
well, I'm not going to try to say that it's conclusive. I'm not going to be the one that's going to sign off saying 100% sure that this is a wire. But from my perspective and from what I've seen and my own opinion about it, it sure looks that way to me. I can't say conclusively, but it looks that way to me, and I'm going to go with the wire theory.
Well, it raises a question in my mind that if they were trying to wire him, why would they wire him outside his shirt where it was more likely to be seen when he twisted, which he did just before it appeared. So whoever was was wiring him didn't do a very good job.
Well, the way the news is anymore, and I use that word lightly when I'm talking about the mainstream media, it's mostly trying to push whatever they feel like they want to push. So I think what's going on is they were pretty sure that they have the narrative from CNN, MSNBC, and same type of mainstream media sources. They already control the narrative.
So
So,
therefore they didn't have to be careful about it being
nah,
detected.
no, at this stage of the ball game, I think they can have Biden come out in a pink tutu, and in the news on CNN and MSNBC, tell everybody he's wearing a beautiful blue and black suit. I mean, and people seem to go with whatever the MSNBC and CNN say.
Or he can come out nude, and who's going to say that the emperor has no clothes, right?
We're at that stage. There are many people who are claiming in various aspects of the world and news and stuff like that that the emperor has no clothes, so to speak. And what happens with those people is they're called conspiracy theorists, and they're demonized by the very people that would have a benefit of lying to the people. So that's the way I take on things.
Yeah, in fact, the history of that phrase "conspiracy theory," I know you're quite familiar with that. Why don't you review that for us? Where that phrase came from?
Well, the phrase, somebody made a statement one time that the CIA invented the phrase, and then somebody went out of their way to prove that the CIA did not invent the phrase. Well, we're not talking about whether they invented it or not. Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorist, was utilized by the CIA, demonized, weaponized, whatever you want to call it, and used against people trying to look into the JFK
Yeah.
assassination.
That,
And so if you didn't believe the book depository and the one shooter and stuff like that, and you started to scratch your head and say something don't add up, and you started to look into it, the term conspiracy theory was put out by the CIA to demonize the people questioning.
yeah,
And so therefore,
that's when it first started appearing prominently in news reports in the media.
well,
Conspiracy theory. Yeah.
there's two FOIA request documents that basically state this. I mean, you could we don't have them here today right now. Maybe we can put them up on the screen. I don't know, but if not, the people can do a search for conspiracy theorists, CIA FOIA documents, and I'm sure one or two websites will come up. Even though it's very limited, I think they're trying to scrub that document.
And FOIA, of course, is freedom of information. You could fill out a form if you're a journalist. I think even if you're not a journalist, you could fill out a form asking for disclosure of what should be a public record that may be hidden by authorities. Sometimes they're successful in producing a document. Other times it's kind of iffy whether they'll produce it or if what they produce is the real document. And a lot of times it may be the real document, but so heavily redacted that you can't really extract much useful information from it.
Well, these particular ones that I've seen are not heavily redacted. They point pretty darn clear to the fact that the CIA weaponized that term. And the way I would figure it is that it was so successful in peer pressure type situation where all they have to do is throw it out a few places, and then the people pick it up, and they're all afraid of peer pressure, and the people themselves, without knowing it, carry the phrase on.
Well,
So it's been demonized and utilized.
another point of contention here with the debate between Biden and Trump is that many people, including myself, saw Trump as really overly aggressive. I think he really overdid that. The belligerence, the bullying, the talking over, the interruptions. And I think he may have lost some votes because of that, especially among women who didn't like his tone to begin with. And this seems to just deepen their repulsion of his style.
From my perspective, from things that I know, from the stuff that I've researched, people are way too focused on paper cuts as opposed to being thrown into a wood chipper. From my perspective, this country is in great deal of trouble, and Trump's personality, whether it be rough, childish, rude, whatever you may call it, is not an important issue. I personally don't care at all. We are in such danger, I feel, of various things that we can get into in a little while. That it's comparing a paper cut to a chainsaw or something like
Yeah,
that.
but that's a separate
There's no
point.
comparison.
That's a separate point. My point is that, whatever the legitimacy is of his approach to get the quote truth out, and to overpower the quote fake news, whatever that may be, in terms of legitimate approach, did it lose him votes as a political strategy? Was that good for his reelection? And I'm not sure if it was.
Well, I personally didn't like the debates. I did think they were kind of childish, and I think a lot of people felt that way. A lot of people, I think, didn't even watch the whole thing for that very reason. They tuned out early. I tuned out early.
Yeah.
Uh, um, I think from what I've heard is that something to the extent of maybe around 6% of the people are undecided so far in this election. And out of that 6%, I heard that 3%, maybe 3% will vote. So the sway of the undecideds is somewhat minimal, depending on how close this race will actually turn out to be. Who knows? I'm sure some were turned off by it, and I've seen others say that they liked actually the way Trump laid into Biden. So, I mean, tit for tat. I mean, whoever likes it on their own accord is going to like it, and who doesn't like it is not going to like it.
Well, that's because that corresponds pretty much to the two camps. The true believers in Trump are not going to be swayed by his performance in this first debate with Biden, and the Biden supporters are certainly not going to change their mind. If anything, their support for Biden will become deeper because of this. But again, you say it's that narrow, undecided vote in the middle, and considering how close this election may be, even just a few percentage points of those voters, undecided voters, could spell defeat or a victory for Trump, depending on which way they were affected by his truculent style.
Well, I don't see it as such a close race. If you watch Trump rallies, he has almost football stadium size
Yeah.
people and crowds showing up. If you watch a Biden, I didn't know what to call it. You can call it a rally, I guess. They have like 6 people in chairs sitting in a lawn,
Yeah.
social distancing. I mean, there's no comparison. We just did a video not too long ago regarding the Scranton area
Yeah.
where Biden hails from, and they had only a small group on either end on this long roadway, and the rest were filled with Trump supporters.
Yeah,
So
we've
I
got
mean,
we've got that on target with Larry Sparano about a week ago, where Biden showed up, the hometown boy, right outside of the hometown of Scranton, his boyhood home, and what the networks did not show was the overwhelming amount of Trump supporters along the road leading up to the stage, and the paltry number of Biden supporters. Now, to me, as a career reporter, investigative reporter, and anchor in my earlier days, that would have been, it should have been, a main component of that story because it was relevant to the election, because it was right near Biden's home territory, and yet the support for Trump was overwhelming. Yet that was not mentioned on any of the mainstream media and networks.
now see, now you say it, but why wasn't it mentioned?
Yeah,
Because in my opinion, they're controlling the narrative. They don't want that getting out. The mainstream media news has been corrupted, has been, whether it be infiltrated or not, call it what you will, but they are definitely pushing out an agenda that they want to push out, in my opinion.
and that's increasingly obvious, that the news organizations now are really propaganda ministries for one side or the other. There is very little, it's almost non-existent, objective reporting with no agenda. They all have axes to grind. Some of them are more subtle about it than others, but they're obviously no longer reporting objectively on these
Well,
events.
this goes back to the Obama administration, and we talked about it once before. Maybe we can look it up and throw it in the video at post production. But it's called the Smith-Mundt Act, M-U-N-D-T, I think, Smith-Mundt Act, where it was a law proposed a long time ago preventing and making it illegal to propagandize the American people. And the Obama administration, for whatever reason, got rid of that law. We can actually look at this post-production and put some pictures up about that Smith Muntak. But I think, you know how I stand, Larry. I'm a huge conspiracy theorist. I believe in a new world order. I believe that for many decades, at the very minimum, that we are under attack, basically. People are trying to take over this country. They saw its military might, and they said, okay, we can't go up against its military. Let's do it a different way. And they're using psychology. Well, that's the main one. They're mainly using psyops, psychological operations, weaponized. Militaries all over the world use psychological operations, and it just happens to be being used upon us now. Who's using it and why and for what end? That's a little bit questionable to those that don't research. For me, I researched and I believe there is a new world order, and it's trying to take over the United States.
Well, you even believe that the rise of China was orchestrated to become an element in taking down the United States as a dominant world power.
When the new world order does anything at all, they get multiple benefits for them out of it. So bringing up China, I mean, you're talking slave labor. You're talking companies that can move over the military-industrial complex, so-called, where they can go over to China, have their products made over there at very minimal cost, and then sold in the United States for 100, 200 times profit margin. And so that was another benefit. There's a monetary benefit, and then there's the military benefit. They know by opening up China and using China's labor force, that the labor force would provide economy boost to the country of China, and it would allow it to build up a pretty substantial military. I think they just recently surpassed our Navy.
Yeah, in size, yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, it's what galls me is that we allowed this buildup of China with our money that we pay for goods manufactured in China and imported abroad here, imported domestically. So our money has gone into the creation of this monster now that's a challenge not just economically, but militarily. They're building up their military. And I get a kick out of Biden talking about how we've got to bring jobs back to America, things should be made in America. Well, you know, he and Obama and other Democrats, when they were in power, allowed this to occur first through NAFTA, which began this outsourcing. First it was NAFTA with Mexico and Canada, but then it led to opening up China. And, you know, Hillary Clinton the last time was talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which she said was the gold standard, which would have even opened it up more, the floodgates, and we would have been losing sovereignty as well. So she and other Democrats were pushing for that. So now Biden is saying, well, we got to bring jobs back. It's got to be made in America. Well, yeah, where was he during his 8 years as vice president with Obama? And where was Clinton? Now, Clinton started this with NAFTA.
Well, I mean, you know my answer, that this was intentional. That for the most part, the Democratic Party has been corrupted at the least, and perhaps even to the point of treason at the most. Where seems to be, to me, my opinion, seems to be an affiliation to something other than the American people in the United States and the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Yeah, well, they don't seem to be putting that as the foremost thing on their minds.
Yeah, I mean, both parties allow the outsourcing because both parties benefit from it, or at least their benefactors benefit from it. The big corporations that fund their campaigns wanted this outsourcing. So both Democrats and Republicans said, sure, we'll help you out with that because you're helping us out with our campaigns.
I wouldn't doubt that both are involved. However, it seems to be the majority of Democrats seem to be more involved.
Well, the hypocrisy at least stands out more with the Democrats because they were supposed to be traditionally, and they were once, the party of the working people. Clinton, I feel you're paying all that baloney, while he's the one who said that we have to have parity with the Republicans in terms of corporate donations, and he was warned that, or he was advised that, well, if we do that, if we switch over to corporate donations, go with the corporations rather than the working class, then the working class will abandon us. But he said, no, where else do they have to go? They'll stick with us. And that came true, at least until Trump was elected.
Uh, all I can do there is kind of agree with you. What I think we should do is finish up this Biden, whether he was wired or not, and then go into whatever. Because we missed a few other examples of what was going on with this maybe microphone, maybe wired thing.
Yeah.
I put on the screen now. This is an animated GIF of the video of whatever it was up his sleeve, kind of moving out and sliding back in.
Well, they're saying rosaries or a crucifix or a pen. That's how they're explaining it. At least
Oh, yeah.
Reuters is and others are saying it.
Well, I can sell you a bridge in Brooklyn if you'd like to, Larry. I mean, it depends on what you wish to believe.
And
I mean,
how about the so-called wire going down? Do we have a shot of
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, we have that too. This is coming from James Wood's Twitter, is where I actually got this picture from. Now, whether he made the picture or he got it from elsewhere, I don't know. However, that's where I got it from. This has to do with the wire in the red circle on the screen. You can see a little bit of that wire sticking out. And over on the left, the diagram from Savox, which I've never heard of until this particular time, you can see a diagram of what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a concealable communication type device where you have these wires and unit on your body, hidden underneath the clothes. One would be, I would imagine, a microphone going down through the sleeve, like the CIA likes to talk into their sleeve all the time. And the other thing would be some sort of a hidden earpiece in the ear. And that's what that diagram on the left is showing. We have a video, let's see if I can bring it up, of this particular wire showing itself a little bit more. Here, let me get to it. Now this video has some audio I'm going to cancel out, but you can see that he's moving around.
Yeah, there it
The
is
wire
lower.
there,
Yeah,
and it goes lower.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
this excuse that it was
A crease.
excuse that a
Yeah, sure.
crease or something. I don't think so. I mean, come on. I
Well,
mean, I'm not blind. I mean, that to me looks like a wire.
I did find it kind of peculiar because I was watching the debate live when he reached into his upper jacket area there. Was he was the jacket binding him, and therefore that explains the crease, or was the wire malfunctioning or getting in the way? I don't know. But again, to me, it's inconclusive. To me, these are not smoking guns definitively saying that it was a wire, it was earpiece, and all that. You really can't tell.
Well, no, I'm not trying to be definitive. I can't be definitive. I can state my opinion. I can state it strongly. I can't state a definitive fact. So what you're getting is my strong opinion from what I've seen.
Well, also what we were discussing was if he was being fed his lines in his ear, that would confuse him even more. Now he was fairly smooth with his delivery, even though the volume is much lower, the voice is much weaker than Trump's strident voice. But, you know, I was an anchor for a number of years. I had an earpiece in me when we were doing the news, and at times while we were reading the teleprompter, the script on the teleprompter, there would be a voice in our ear from the producer saying, we don't have that video, go to the next story, et cetera, et cetera. So those short advisements you could handle while you're reading the teleprompter, but if if a script is being read to you and you have to coordinate it almost simultaneously with what you're hearing in your ear, to me that would cause even more confusion. And Biden did not seem confused.
Well, Biden has been like this for some time now. And if I had to take a guess, only a guess, is that he has been getting this for quite a while. He might have become used to it. We talked about this, and I asked you, like, when you first started the news broadcast, I'm sure it was more confusing than when you, after years of using it, you got more used to it.
No, but
Uh,
what I'm saying, Rack, though, is that once you get used to it, you become a veteran at it. It'd still be very difficult to repeat almost simultaneously what you're hearing in your ear without being confused, without halting, without stumbling at times.
Well,
It's
that
a,
assumes that they're feeding him, word for word, and he's repeating word for word. It doesn't really have to be that way. They might just, prod him with a couple little ideas and suggestions, quick little quips, and then he just kind of carries it on from there. The other thing that Trump asked for was a drug test,
yeah.
and many people have thought that maybe he was drugged up. The extent of the conspiracy theory goes so far as to say that he received a blood transfusion from a young, healthy person, and that kind of plumped him up. Which a lot of people say his face looked a little bit plumper. His eyes looked a little bit more dilated than a regular person's eyes would be under those same lights and circumstances. So whether he was drugged up, whether he got a transfusion, whether he was wired, we don't know, but it sure seems that way to me.
Yeah, in fact, it recalled his one-on-one debate with Bernie Sanders after most of the other primary candidates dropped out. Then it was just one-on-one, he and Sanders, and Biden then also became surprisingly coherent and surprisingly smoother, more forceful, and people were marveling at that at the time. That was a few months before during the primary season. So now it's a repeat of that. So is he being drugged up? Is he having a good day as opposed to a bad day that some people would snillily have? And it hasn't really been established if he does have dementia, if he is pre-senile. I mean, all that is speculation. But it is obvious just from looking at him and listening to him in the past 4 or 5 months that much of the time he does seem very halting in stark contrast to how he was with the one-on-one with Trump this week.
Well, I mean, even that, in addition to some of his stuttering, some of his kind of weird things that he's talked about. I mean, how often have you gone to a swimming pool and let children play with your leg hair and watch it come back up and then talk about cockroaches? I mean, Biden is obviously off as far as I'm concerned. There's obvious examples about it. You won't see them on the mainstream media. And unless a person gets away from CNN, MSNBC, and starts looking deeper, they're not going to see them either. So you got two camps of people. Maybe some that hate Trump's bombastic nature, hate Trump's rudeness or whatever, and like the traditional, presidency air that Joe Biden has. Well, all they're seeing is the mainstream media. They're not looking deeper. There's problematic things here that need to be seen and that just aren't being seen by many people.
Now, another issue that came up was Trump's taxes, and conveniently, the New York Times came out with that story just a day before the debate. Now, while it is inherently an unfair tax system, giving the big money people much more breaks in taxes than the little people, it raises the counter issue of why the heck didn't Biden and Obama and other Democrats try to change the tax structure. The reason why they didn't is because both sides have these corporate sponsors and they don't want to mess with that. Another thing, not so much in Trump's defense, but just an explanation of how business works, is that you get these write-offs, you get the depreciation on equipment and investments and all that. So many big business people and corporations pay no taxes. It's perfectly legal, and the tax system was set up to favor them with the supposed higher calling of higher purpose of encouraging business, the expansion of the economy. That's why businesses get all these tax breaks. So what Trump was doing was taking advantage of legal loopholes and actually a structure of taxes. And if he didn't, then all the other businesses that do take advantage of it would have an advantage over him. So, I could understand why he does that. It's a separate question whether that tax system is fair. And if it's unfair, which many people think it is, including myself, then why didn't Biden and Obama and Clinton and other Democrats do something about it all these years?
Well, what I think it comes down to is mudslinging right now. They're looking for anything they can demonize Trump with. from the Biden camp, and these type of things that they're slinging at Trump, to me, are not as important as bigger issues. When you're talking about taxes and maybe there's some sort of a corporate reason with maybe payoffs or little bonuses or whatever they're getting. I
Well,
mean,
what it
how many
is,
times?
it's legalized bribery, which also goes by the name of campaign contributions. That's what it's
Well,
all about.
it doesn't have to stop there. I mean, how many times we discussed this yesterday? How many times have you seen where somebody is on some sort of a committee or something to regulate some
Oh
industry,
yeah,
and then
revolving door.
they
Yeah,
right, and they
yeah,
get it right off that committee and right out of the Congress,
yeah,
and they go into some nice cushy
yeah.
CEO type job with the place that they were reviewing.
Yeah, the
Uh,
regulators, once they leave their regulatory agency, go right into these corporations that they were regulating.
Well, I
So,
mean, come on, this is standing out right in front of your face type
yeah,
stuff of corruption within the system. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
blatant. It's bad. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't there, but it's
So,
there.
a regulator looking to his future employment, is he going to give breaks to these agencies that he's regulating, these businesses that he's regulating, so he can get a nice job when he gets out of government? Or is he going to be firm and hold them to the fire, you know?
Right. Well, not only that, but you also got people that are in Congress. They get a certain amount of pay per year, but
Yeah.
yet somehow they wind up multi-millionaires that would be way beyond what they would normally get paid. I mean, so where does that money come from too? I mean, there's obviously tons of corruption, and I think our country and the world is suffering for it. We have to have a different moral system built into our country and the world.
Yeah, it's it goes on and on. Again, the corruption is on both sides, and that's why none of these reforms, even though they're given a lip service by both sides, it doesn't get passed because both sides don't want to rock the boat of their corporate masters. It's
Well,
as simple as that.
right, and that's where I see like the whole world being in trouble. This goes back to what we kind of got away from, when I brought it back to this whether he was wired or not thing. But I think the world is heading down a very dangerous path
Yeah.
of the United States, especially. It seems to be under attack. As far as I'm concerned, we are under attack. It's a different type of warfare than the helicopters and planes and bombs that we're used to, but we've been under psychological attack. We have now economy is under attack. We've been biologically. I believe that was an attack. I believe the virus was released intentionally. I think this is what is a softening of this country for an eventual invasion
Well,
by either China, UN, or somebody.
mention of the virus brings another thing to mind for me is very little mention in the mainstream media of the biolab that was right near Wuhan, where the virus first broke out. It was in the news for a few days and then was quickly poo-pooed. I mean, investigative reporters should be pursuing that vigorously. Was it an accidental release from that biolab in China close to Wuhan, either accidental or intentional, but they've stayed away from that. So what does that tell you about the news and
Right.
narratives being controlled?
Not
Yeah.
only that, but of course, the way it is in the politically correct environment we live in now, many from the left, mostly from the left and mainstream media, have said, "Oh, don't call it the China virus. Don't call it the Wuhan virus." Trump ignores that and continues, and they
Yeah.
demonize Trump for doing it. To me, there's a reason behind that.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to the biolab, I'm not saying that it was from the biolab either accidentally or intentionally released, but what I'm saying is investigate it because this is a main element now with the pandemic. Where did it come from? And since that biolab was close, and many reports say that they were experimenting with that kind of virus and perhaps even weaponizing it, then it stands to reason that a good investigative reporter would investigate the possibility, prove it wrong, discount it, or come up with an inconclusive report, but at least pursue it as an investigation, and they haven't done that.
I think the majority of what you call investigative reporters have gone the way of dinosaurs. I don't
Yeah.
think they exist anymore. Maybe in the alternative media, you will find investigative reporters that will do such a thing. But then we're talking the alternative media. They get demonized. They get called conspiracy theorists. They get slandered basically in any type of mainstream press
Julian,
or television.
or they get jailed. Julian Assange. That's another thing. You know, all reporters, journalists worldwide should be defending that guy. Instead, you know, they're away from it. They don't want anything to do with it. Wash their hands of it. I mean,
As of this as of this recording now, David Icke only a couple days ago was giving a talk in London. David Icke being himself a large conspiracy theorist that sort of leans towards the New World Order quite heavily. And he had as some of his co-speakers doctors that were going to talk about the virus in a not PC way, a not politically correct way. And as they start to speak, the doctors themselves, as they started to speak, they were raided by the police and everybody was put in handcuffs and
yeah,
jailed and everything else. I mean, you have that. Only about maybe a month ago, you have a woman, I believe she was from I can't think of the name of it now, but she's a doctor, and she came out and spilled the beans that the coronavirus, COVID-19, was manufactured and intentionally released. There's a video of her talking about this. Good luck finding the video. It's been scrubbed. It's not allowed to be anywhere.
yeah.
People are getting banned from everywhere because of it.
And,
And
in
then
fact,
prior to that, there was another group of doctors who also said that hydroxychloroquine mixed with well, not mixed with, but with zinc, in tandem with zinc and maybe some vitamin C, etc., would help a great deal, if not even maybe cure the virus. And they were banned everywhere.
yeah.
So, I mean, the narrative is being controlled. This is horrible. This is not the United States of America when you talk about free speech.
And I know you know a lot about how all these contrary reports, this false information, is being deep sixed now more and more on these social media sites where
YouTube is one of the, if you want to call it best examples or worst examples, whatever word you want to use, where in years past, where if I did a search for Alex Jones and the New World Order, I would get, 30, 40 different YouTube channels that were just regular people,
yeah,
Alex Jones himself maybe, regular people talking about conspiracies or whatever. Now all that's gone. If you try to do keyword searches, all you're going to get at the top of YouTube is all mainstream media, CBS, NBC, etc., CNN. You'll have to go through like 30 or 40 of them even before you start getting anywhere near a regular person channel.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're controlling, the internet used to be the alternative. It used to be the refuge of those who wanted to go beyond the mainstream media narratives and explore what other information is out there. Now, a lot of it on the internet has been and is crazy stuff, wild stuff. But at least you had the option at one time to go through, wade through all that and extract as much information from all sides and come up with your own conclusions. But now that's being denied. And as you say, more and more all you get is mainstream media featured prominently in these website searches, and the other is way, way down, and a lot of them are totally scrubbed. And this is an increasing tendency now. So, where do you go for information anymore? Very difficult.
It is getting more and more difficult. The internet used to be the Wild West, and now it's not.
Yeah.
Who's controlling it and why? It makes me wonder. If a discerning individual does the correct type of searches, information can still be found so far. That may change very shortly. I have a bad feeling about what's going on with the United States of America. That's it. That's all I can say. People like to use the excuse that, well, these are individual companies. They're private companies. They can do what they like. They can ban whoever they want. They can do whatever they want. Well, yeah, that's a nice end around to the First Amendment. The amount of usage of Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc., should, as far as I'm concerned, almost put them to the realm of where Xerox used to be. Xerox was a company name; it had a company name, and they cannot keep that name under copyright now. Anybody can use the word Xerox anytime they want because it's been in the public domain so much that it's become a common usage word. So like you can say something about Xerox and it not exactly mean the company. You can just mean, oh, I want a Xerox copy of something. The way that Xerox copies used to be. That cannot be controlled anymore. And there's other examples of this where something is in such public usage that it becomes in the public domain. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the way Twitter, Facebook, YouTube should currently be. It should not be, you should not be able to ban people for their speech, whether you call it hate speech or whatever speech. You should not be able to ban people and stop them from freely speaking. I mean, most of these companies are based in the United States.
Yeah.
There's this saying where years ago there was this court ruling where a company can be considered a person. They said a corporation is a person and has the right to sue, to own property, etc. So they're considered a person. Well, if that person is in the United States, how come they're not following the Bill of Rights? How are they, as a person, able to stop somebody from having free speech? Some lawyer ought to get into this and take a look at this and nail these companies.
You know, also they could apply antitrust laws that are on the books but not applied anymore. Yeah, and that also gets into the fact that there's only 6 companies now that control 90% of the media, and that was because of the consolidation bill that was passed years ago under the Democrats. So again, you know, where is all this going, and where is the traditional Democratic Party that was the champion and defender of the working class? That's gone. Both sides now are minions of corporations and special interests.
There's a document that can still be found so far on the internet, and it has some title like this, the 45 Goals of Communism, or something like that. I know that me and you kind of got into this briefly, and that you had a printout that I gave you. Were you able to read that printout?
I haven't yet, no.
All right, well, if you get the chance sometime, read the printout, and I'm also talking to the audience here to look up the 45 Goals of Communism, or it's titled something like that, and you'll be able to find both PDF files and regular websites which have these goals. And if you read through them, all 45 goals, pretty much a lot of them have been fulfilled. And that the ones that aren't fulfilled are currently now seeming to be fulfilled. So this document is from 1961. It was entered into the congressional record by somebody in Congress. I forget his name, the Honorable, I forget his name, something with an H. And he read this into the congressional record. It's there. It's public knowledge. Just read the 45 Goals of Communism, and you can see we are in trouble because most of them have been fulfilled. And the ones that aren't fulfilled are currently being fulfilled, in my opinion. Just you'll be able to examine it right with the news, and you can say, holy mackerel, that's going right on with the news today.
Well, you know, also now, the election is close now. What's going to happen when there's no winner declared for weeks, maybe even months? You know, is this an opportunity for some kind of a takeover to stop the spread of civil unrest and rioting, et cetera, et cetera? That's one of the conspiracy theories also being talked about quite a bit today.
I think that one is highly probable. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't that way, but I think it's extremely probable. I think the United States maybe has a month left, 1 day short or 1 day extra of a month. And I think after the November 3rd, you're going to see all sorts of bad things happening in this country. I'm not an expert. I'm just stating my opinion. It seems to be heading in that direction. And because of what you're saying about like the election being close, see, I don't see it that way. I see Trump having tons of support, Biden having very little support. But I think what you did say is key, is that what they're trying to do is not so much take the election on November 3rd, but to hold it up and hold it up and hold it up, and then I don't know what they're going to do during that time, but it doesn't seem to be good.
Yeah, there's going to be protests on both sides, no matter who wins or who loses. And also, here's another big element that could decide or misdecide the election is the mail-in balloting, massive mail-in balloting, which is fraught with potential for fraud. And then here's something else that the mainstream media is failing to make a distinction about. Mail-in balloting is totally separate from absentees. Absentees have been around for years. They're pretty reliable. They're traceable. You have to request one, and they mail it to you. Then you mail it back. The mail-in, they're mailing it randomly in many areas. Old voter lists, people may have died off, may have moved, and everybody's getting them. According to there's some horrendous reports. They're being mailed to dead people. They're being mailed to illegal aliens. They're being mailed to any name that they can come up with. Now I don't know
Cats.
how.
How about cats? There's a lady that received a voting ballot for her cat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's and who knows who those ballots are going to, and who knows who's sending them back. Who knows which ones are being intercepted. Here in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, we're talking from Pennsylvania, not far from Scranton, there is already something in Luzerne County where there were military ballots for Trump and they were discarded. So there's all kinds of opportunities to play games with this massive mail-in balloting policy that they have now.
And it ain't the way it used to be where people cared about this country. It seems like people only care about their party for some reason. And I'm mostly speaking about the Democrats for some reason. They seem to be hell-bent on making sure Biden gets in and not accepting the results if Trump wins.
Well, I mean, politics has always been corrupt. There's always been special interests pulling strings or trying to manipulate the system. However, in the old days, getting back to the traditional Democratic Party, the Democratic Party was a counterbalance to big money, big corporations. The unions were fighting the big businesses, the robber barons era. Coming out of that, there was reforms. The union movement took place. Actually, right in Pennsylvania, and not far from here, is where it started in heavy unionism because of the conditions in the coal mines in those days. So back then, the Democratic Party was a champion of the working class. They got a lot of the reforms in place. They helped labor laws and all that. But now that's all been turned around. Now it's a one-party system, essentially. And they're all under the thumb of big special interests and big corporations.
Yeah, I don't see it being that way nowadays. What you just described as far as the Democrats go, I see it very weird. I see the Democrats as being something anti-American. The reason I'm saying this now is, as far as I'm concerned, the true test of an American is the Bill of Rights. Who is pro Bill of Rights? What party, Republicans or Democrats, say they want free speech? Which ones are pushing hate speech laws? What does Biden say about guns as opposed to what Trump says about guns? Yeah, that doesn't have to come down to Biden and Trump. This is the Democratic Party itself is against guns, is against free speech. They want to restrict speech. They're for all this banning everywhere on the internet, especially social media sites. You can't be against guns if you're an American. There's a reason for guns, and it's not hunting. It's not sports shooting. It's nothing like that. It's to prevent tyranny from getting a foothold and being able to do whatever it wants with you. And there's this word out there that I encourage people to look up. The word is democide, D-E-M-O-C-I-D-E, democide. And one of the first search results that will come back when you do that word is the University of Hawaii study. Professor at the University of Hawaii, who is now deceased, did a study on democide. Democide being the murder of the people by their own governments. And when you look at those numbers, you're talking in the 20th century, 262 million people were murdered by their own governments. And prior to the 20th century, you have an additional 625, I think, million people murdered by their own governments. Put them together, you get 888 million people. That's almost 1 billion people murdered by their own governments after being disarmed.
Well, I don't know how heavy a lot of mainstream Democrats are into the sort of thing you're talking about, but what they are doing is pandering to all these political identity groups, to various rights groups, victimized groups, minorities, all that. Clearly,
Oh, nonsense. Larry.
clearly pandering to them, and
Moms
they're having
demand action.
and because they want their votes, they're having more of an influence on what had been a traditional Democratic Party.
You're talking grassroots stuff, which ain't grassroots. It just is not. You got the Bloomberg money funding every party
Hmm.
for America. I don't know, something that was, and some anti-gun thing. Every state for anti-gun laws. I don't know. I don't remember the name of it, but that's Bloomberg money behind that. I wouldn't doubt Bloomberg money's behind Moms Demand Action. So we're not talking grassroots stuff here. We're talking somebody with a ton of money fostering and growing these grassroots things like a farmer would grow seeds on a farm.
Well, a prime example of that, of course, is George Soros, who apparently is verboten on even Fox News recently. Uh, Harris Faulkner was talking to guests, and Newt Gingrich brought up the Soros factor that he's been funding the campaigns of a lot of these officials, the district attorneys, the various prosecutors, mayors, police chiefs that have become very liberal and not prosecuting criminals, letting them go, and they're back on the streets. And he says that could be directly traced to the money that George Soros has been putting into their campaigns. And they cut him off. They said we need to talk about George Soros. Now, this is Fox, which is supposed to be the least fettered news network, and yet even there, at least among some anchors, that's verboten. Uh, Tucker Carlson still talks about Soros, but on this particular segment with Harris Faulkner, didn't want to hear anything about it. Cut it off.
I mean, when you talk about Soros, we go right back to the beginning of the Trump presidency. Right after he got elected and was beginning to take office, you have this Women's March. The Women's March was funded by Move On.
Hmm.
Move On is a George Soros organization. So basically, that time in the beginning of the Trump administration, when you saw millions of women across the country marching for whatever, that was basically funded and started and fostered by George Soros and his organizations. Now, the trouble with George Soros and his organizations, he has so many organizations, it's hard to track down the money.
Yeah,
So he can hide behind many, many doors and still be pulling all the strings.
yeah. Another element along control behind the scenes, the Jeffrey Epstein case. To me, that was obviously a blackmail operation. And when you consider the figures involved, celebrities, politicians, people in important positions, he was getting the dope on all of them so that they could be controlled with the legislation they passed, with the business deals and all that. I mean, this was a massively funded operation. It wasn't just a bunch of frat boys getting together and having, fun at a wild Animal House party. This was a well organized operation that funded by hundreds of millions of dollars, jet planes flying around the world, private islands. What for? The purpose was to get these people in compromising positions. To me, that is obvious. And look at how little is being said about that.
Well, it's not setting precedent. This goes even back to Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover and his files that he used to use against, I'm sorry, not Herbert Hoover.
J. Edgar
Yeah,
Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover. Thank you.
I
Yeah,
don't know about Herbert.
no, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. Anyway, he had all these files on everybody, and he would use them as leverage. He
Yeah.
was one of the first ones that I knew that was, I don't know if you want to call it smart enough or shrewd enough, but instead of going out and arresting the criminals, he just would collect them up in his back pocket and use them whenever he wanted to.
Well, he was the guy who denied the existence of organized crime. You know?
Yeah, I can understand why.
And the rumor there was, that he had to deal with them. And, unsubstantiated, of course, was what they had on him was what? You know what they supposedly had on
Well, yeah, he used to like to dress up in a special opposite costume.
him. I mean, who knows? But the FBI director denying that organized crime existed in the U.S. I mean, something was going on there for that kind of a denial.
We as a species, the human species, are in dire straits because of our lack of morals. And this comes down to the individual. It doesn't have to be a Trump. It doesn't have to be a Biden. It doesn't have to be a Soros. The individual that votes a certain way because their boss wants a certain person and they think they're securing their job because of it, or they're going to get an extra deal, or they're going to be able to hire a family member. Nepotism running
Yeah.
rampant. I mean, we ourselves as a species need to take a look at the first person we need to take a look at is not Trump or Soros or Biden. It's in the mirror at ourselves, and everybody has to stop being corrupt themselves
Well,
and start there. That's
well,
a good
Rack, I
starting.
mean that'll never happen. We've always had that in human nature. That'll continue generations hence. But what was a check and balance on that was the structure of the Constitution of the United States. The founders knew about that kind of corruption. They knew about human foibles. They knew how people infuse themselves into government for private gain. But the Constitution was supposed to arrest much of those tendencies which cannot be erased from human nature. The problem now is that they're erasing provisions of the Constitution that held
Yeah,
all that back.
it's like I've always been saying. We've been infiltrated by bad people in very powerful places, and it's not getting better.
Well, you see,
Somebody somewhere has to have at least the power and clout to stand up and say, "We're not going to do this no more." And I think Trump so far has been that person. He's made many mistakes. I don't like some of the things he's done. This idea of red flag laws, of taking the guns first, due process second, that's a big error on his part. I don't know who's advising him, but that's terrible. I totally disagree with Trump on that one. Then the bump stock issue, same thing there. I mean, there's many things that Trump has done by putting Goldman Sachs people in his administration way at the top. I mean, he's done a lot of things wrong, and I still haven't determined whether Trump is New World Order or not. I think he is not. I think there's a chance that he's not because everybody's against him. But Biden, as far as I'm concerned, he's just a puppet. He's a puppet on a string for bigger, tougher, more influential people in the background.
Well, along those lines, people are saying a vote for Biden is actually a vote for Harris as president.
Well, I mean, they've come out and said it themselves. It might have been Freudian slips or errors, but both of them said it themselves.
The Harris
The Harris
Biden,
administration.
the
Yeah.
Harris Biden administration. Yeah.
You figure, well, it was one day that one of them said it. I forget which one said it
She
first.
said she said it first, and then he said it a day or two later.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's weird. Yeah. I mean, they're just kind of handing it to you on a silver platter.
I don't know if they're trying to put this in the minds of the public and make it acceptable, or if Biden, if he is senile, heard her say that and then he couldn't get it out of his head and he blurted it out. I don't know, but it was pretty weird. Within a day or two of each other, they were both saying it.
Absolutely. And then right around that same time, I saw a picture of Camilla Harris with George Soros' son, all chummy together. So is he still pulling strings? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean they're all chummy. I worked in New York State when Hillary was senator there, and when they had that meltdown on Wall Street because they removed all the checks and balances, all the restrictions. The most she would say was, "Well, I tell them they shouldn't do that anymore." Yeah, she wasn't outraged by the Wall Street abuses that led to that crash back then. It was, they're all her friends, they're all her donors, and that's what's wrong with the Democrats who used to be the counterweight to the Republicans. Now, they're part of the system, and
We have a
and the
we have a
Republicans are no
voice.
better.
Yeah,
Maybe
we have a
Trump,
voice.
Trump is not the typical Republican. So even those who are not crazy about him say that he was needed as a change agent. Now, whether he's going to fulfill that promise as people are hoping he would remains to be seen. But people who didn't like him personally said, well, you need somebody like that to shake up what's going on, the corruption in government. So that's part of the reason why he was elected in 2016. Of course, the main reason was the disenfranchisement of the working class and all this political correctness, extreme political correctness.
We have this election coming up, and to me, a very big danger in it is a not informed voter.
Yeah.
Years ago, voters used to be informed. They would keep themselves informed. Maybe even information was more free-flowing and out there. Where nowadays, people are being banned and people are being censored, etc. So we don't have an informed voter. You need an informed public that knows what's going on. In my opinion, if a person does not know about, or at least have tried to study seriously the New World Order, and they also must need to know about PSYOPs, because if you don't have an informed voter, what you have is a propagandized voter. And I think that's heavily on the Biden campaign, is relying on the propagandized voter as opposed to the informed voter.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the First Amendment was because of that for a democracy to survive, you need an informed public. And that's why that was enshrined in the Constitution. Jefferson, who pushed for the First Amendment, didn't like a lot of the newspapers of his day, found them scurrilous and full of lies. He said, yet he understood that with an open press, no restrictions on freedom of the press, in balance, the public would be getting information rather than restricting it, which had been done in other countries. And England was a tyranny with that, and they wanted to get away from that. And that's why they were wise enough to see the crucial importance of the First Amendment, and now that's being eroded.
Well, we have a controlled media, and now we have this virus keeping everybody at home. The water cooler conversations, the casual meetings at lunchtime, etc. All this kind of talk that people would normally have with one another about this upcoming election is not there. It's absent.
Yeah, it is. It's tough for people to get accurate information, and of course, people now just look at headlines in the paper if they still get newspapers, and on TV, that they just tune into the network news, which is basically headline news with video, and there's no depth to this. So it's not a good state. Before we wrap it up, though, about the New World Order, now, you and I have a basic difference of opinion on that, too. I don't know if it's any kind of a monolithic, dark organization in the shadows controlling things, or if it's just a confluence of special interests. And
I've studied it for 20 years. I think I've known you for like 6 to 8 months, so you'll catch up. It just takes time.
Okay. With that note, we'll close this session, and more to come as the election comes upon us very quickly. This is Larry Sparano of On Target with Larry Sparano. Thanks for being with us. Along with us tonight was Rack of RackAttackGamer YouTube channel. Thanks very much. See you again.
Thank you. Bye.